Hey everybody, it's me, Crazyfrankie, and I'd like to welcome you to my Week 3 4 key game picks. Before we talk about Week number 3, it was a wild Week number 2, and obviously the theme for Week number 2 was comeback. 3 games in Week number 2 had comebacks, and 3 of those games that had the comebacks were the Dolphins-Ravens game, the Jets-Browns game, and the Cardinals-Raiders game. Out of those 3 games that had the comebacks and all that, obviously the one that had to been the most devastating one has to be the Cardinals-Raiders game. The Cardinals and Raiders both in needing a win, and the Raiders had the lead the majority of that game, and then obviously they had the Cardinals into I think it was a 20-0 lead up until the third quarter. Late in the third quarter, and then the Cardinals started coming out on their comeback. But Kyle Murray in the second half of that game was unbelievable. If anybody who watched that game, it was basically like playing Madden, and basically you had your game controller, and basically he just made some video game type of moves. It was just unbelievable, from an unbelievable 2-point conversion to running in for I think he had 2 rushing touchdowns in that game, and it was just unbelievable. And then obviously the Raiders offense the turnovers killed them in overtime, and the Cardinals defense ended up winning with the fumble recovery that ended the game on a fumble recovery touchdown. So yeah, you look at it from that standpoint, I mean, everybody talked about which have been the surprising 0-2 teams and all. The Raiders are definitely one of them, especially given that the AFC West is competitive. Yeah, that definitely was a devastating loss for the Raiders. And you got to wonder, I mean, I was reading as a lot of people were blaming Derek Carr for not getting the offense going in the second half. It wasn't so much as on him. Obviously, I think there was a lot of questionable play calling by Josh McDaniels. And not only that, the defense had the Raiders defense really had big time issues. And it's been years that they could have had at least a competitive Raiders team, and yet they have not found a way to fix their defense. I blame a lot of that more on the defense as much as you could blame Derek Carr in that offense or Josh McDaniels' play calling. A lot of it was on the defense, to be honest with you. They did not find a way to stop Kyle Murray, and they should have. And they had a lead, and then in the second half they gave it up. Other than that, the rest of week number 2 was 2 games that were pure dominance. And obviously everybody talked about the Bills on Monday night. They destroyed the Tennessee Titans, giving up Tennessee coming off of that terrible loss. And when I made my 4 key game picks last week, I was spot on that game was going to be a blowout. And it didn't surprise me one. The Bills are really, right now for the time being, are the class of the AFC, possibly the class of the NFL, unless if there's any teams willing to step up and give them competition. Obviously, look, I still have to see him play the Chiefs, and then let's just see if anybody else in the AFC. Remember, the Bills actually have a good game coming up against the Dolphins, and I will get into that in a few minutes because that is going to be one of my key game picks I will get into. How about Jalen Hurts and the Eagles? They're making their own statement as they basically embarrass the Vikings. And I don't know, the Eagles are starting to make a case of themselves that they could be a threat in the NFC conference, that nobody's even giving them any attention. Other than that, I did not want to get into too much about what happened with Justin Herbert and the ribs and all that, but the amount of pain he played through in that fourth quarter almost amounted to comeback. But obviously the Chargers did not. They basically gave up the lead in the second half when the game that they should have had Kansas City. They should have had Patrick Mahomes beat, but give the Chiefs some credit. In Patrick Mahomes, they did come back and win. Other than that, let's talk about week number 3. All right, let's begin with key game number 1. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, talking about the Bills. It's a big one this is a big one here in the AFC East right now. The Bills versus the Dolphins. Given how the Dolphins came back against the Ravens and all that, this game now is important to who may pretty much control the rest of the division. But I look at it from a standpoint right now. This is a big game for Miami. And given this is a real test for Tua to see if he can break through that Bills defense. Now, Josh Allen last week, his stats were 26 of 38, 317 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Tua was 36 of 50, 469 yards, 6 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions in the big comeback against the Ravens. As I was saying right now, this this is a big game for Tua. This might be a game that he really needs to make a statement here and tell the Bills in that division, hey, you're not gonna just run away with that division. You're gonna be putting up a fight with us. Are the Dolphins for real, given how they played in their last 2 games? I would say they're sort of for real. They're definitely AFC contenders this year, given how they played. But I know it's only 2 games right now. Let's just see what Tua and that offense can do against one of the elites in the AFC. Given how the Bills basically embarrassed the Titans last week, that defense will have a little bit more of their hands full with Tua, given how he played last week against the Ravens. I would say this is more the pundits have leaning towards the Bills here, and the Bills are a 4.5-point favorite as of the time of this video. This is a real test for Miami to see if they can keep up with the Bills here. Even though the game, I know you could say the weather could be a factor and all because Florida's still like humidly hot this time of year, and weather could be a factor in this one here. I don't think it's going to matter here. The Dolphins might make it a game, but you got to go with the Buffalo Bills here. I don't know if the Dolphins are ready yet to keep up with, given how the Bills have been in the last 2 games, given how they are looking just good. I know the Bills had some injuries last week against the Titans, especially one injury where one of their players basically almost snapped their neck off. It was I don't know if you saw the video. That was a terrible injury right there. It was hard, but I think the Bills will beat the Dolphins here. The Bills are in a class of themselves, and given how the offense basically embarrassed Tennessee, but I think it's going to be a much closer game, but the Bills all the way in this one here. You got to go with the Bills here. The Bills are a 4.5-point favorite. You got to take the Bills over the Dolphins here. All right, key game number 2. It is the Green Bay Packers versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs are a 2.5-point favorite in this one here, and it wouldn't surprise me if that goes to 2, maybe 1.5 by the time it's kickoff here. Aaron Rodgers in a big win over the Bears last week, 19 of 25, 234 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Tom Brady last week against the Saints, finally getting a win in the regular season against them. 18 of 34, 190 yards, 1 touchdown, and no interceptions. He didn't play all, his stats weren't that impressive last week, but Tampa Bay's defense did their job last week in forcing turnovers over the Saints to give the Bucs a huge win. But obviously questions are going to be regarding in this game. Obviously Mike Evans is appealing his 1-game suspension right now, so I really don't know if he's going to be, I don't know if the appeal is going to be in time, if he actually avoids that 1-game suspension. It's very hard to say right now because Mike Evans is really going to be needed in this game, given the Packers and their offense. But given how the Packers are playing with basically with a much younger team now, and obviously it's a bit, and basically in 2 games and all, he did a game against the Bears last week. He did work out some things with their receivers and all, and they did play, and it looked like they're starting to get on track here. But when you look at Rodgers versus Brady here, and Tom Brady has won 5 of the 6 meetings between these two quarterbacks here. Aaron Rodgers has only beaten Brady once. Other than that, given his track record, he's 5. Brady is 5-1 against Rodgers here. I don't know if Rodgers will get off the schneid here because given how he's always struggled anytime he faces off against Brady, and given how the Buccaneers defense really did a good job against the Saints last week, they beat him in the second half of that game. And when I look at it at this point right now, it's going to be a very, very close game here. I think it's going to be very close here. You got to take it with a grain of salt. Treat it with caution in this one here. It's a tough pick. But making a football pick, I think Brady will continue his dominance against Rodgers here. I don't know, given how the Bucs defense is much better than the Bears were last week and all. I think they're going to get to Brady in this. I think the Bucs defense is going to get to Rodgers in this one here. The Buccaneers defense is pretty good. And Rodgers is going to have to really make some hard plays in order to keep up, especially that Bucs defense is very good. So who do I got in this one here? You got to go with the Buccaneers here. It's going to be a close game. It's very close. It's going to be a tough pick here. But I'm gonna stick with the current track record for Tom Brady here. I think he continues his dominance over Aaron Rodgers here. I'm picking the Buccaneers 2.5 over the Packers. Key game number 3, a big one in the NFC West. It is the Rams versus the Cardinals. Both teams at 1-1. Obviously, for the Rams, the defending Super Bowl champions, they almost became victim of the comeback last week after the Falcons made it a game in the second half there. But luckily, the Rams defense actually stood up and made some plays and stopped the Falcons from coming back. Now, Matthew Stafford in that game against the Falcons, he was 27 of 36, 272 yards, 3 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions. There's a lot of question marks going on how healthy he is right now. Now, Kyle Murray in that huge comeback, 31 of 49, 277 yards, one touchdown. I think it was that one touchdown was that rushing touchdown he had, and 1 interception. The Rams are a 4-point favorite in this one here, and that number is definitely going to get lower. I think it's going to be 3.5, maybe 3, by the time kickoff happens on Sunday here. Rams defense needs to make a statement here against the Cardinals. They split the season series last year, and by the looks of it wouldn't surprise me if they split the season series again this year. It took a while for the Cardinals to really get back on track, and luckily they did it quickly against the Raiders to see what they're made of. Now, this is where the Rams defense really needs to get to Kyle Murray or find a way to stop him from getting out of the pocket, because there is huge question marks for that Rams defense. And obviously, their offense can still score points, but I think right now their defense is has really took a step back. I know losing Von Miller was a factor, and obviously with the retirement he had, it is really tough to say how the Rams will play in this one here. It is going to be a close game. It's definitely going to be a close game here. I don't see this game being a blowout whatsoever here. It's a tough pick here, a very, very tough one here. The thing is, I would say the Rams need to this is where the defending champions need to make their statement here. They're saying that you can't forget about us. It's a tough one here. Given how Arizona's offense has gotten back on track a little bit here, it's a tough one here. This is another game you got to treat this with caution here. It could go either way, but I'm going to pick the Rams here. I think the Rams will get back on track here. It's going to be a close game here. They'll find a way to get to Kyle Murray in this one here. I think the defense finally woke up, but given how they almost lost to the Falcons here, it's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a tough game for the Rams. It's going to be a close game, but I'll stick with the Rams in this one. Rams at -4. I think they'll beat the Cardinals here. All right, and key game number 4, it is the Dallas Cowboys versus the New York Giants. Surprising, the Giants are 2-0, and given how Daniel Jones and that offense has really starting to click here, but the Giants defense has really made a statement. They're actually playing much better than I expected here. Now the Cowboys, obviously with Cooper Rush last week, and basically had to win on a last-second field goal, given how Dallas's defense almost gave up the lead to the Bengals, but they were able to come together and make one last drive with the game-winning field goal last week. Cooper Rush was 19 of 31, 235 yards, 1 touchdown, no interception. Daniel Jones was 22 of 34, 176 yards, 1 touchdown, and no interceptions here. Giants are a 2.5-point favorite. That definitely will go to 2, maybe 1.5. This should be a close game here. Now, this is where the Giants really need to make their own statement here to really say that, hey, you can't forget about us here. We're not the same Giants. But it's really tough to say given how the Cowboys are trying to get back on track. They're 1-1 right now, and this is where the Cowboys really need to step it up here. Obviously, they need to get Ezekiel Elliott going in the running game, and they need to do something. I expect this to be a close game here in this one here. But something tells me that the Cowboys are going to win this game, and that's what I'm going to go with. I'm picking the Cowboys here. Their offense is starting to click, even though they're without Dak Prescott. But it's just something that Cooper Rush has done a fantastic job of keeping that offense going here. But there is question marks about that Cowboys defense if they're able to hold on to the lead. But I don't know if the Giants, if they're ready for this prime time yet, because the Cowboys are still one of the picks to win the East. And given if they can get back, if they continue to get on a roll, if they start to get on a roll here, the Cowboys are going to be tough to keep from winning the division. It's really tough to say if the Giants are going to be ready for this because the Cowboys are still a factor in that division. The division is going to be tough. The division is going to be much tougher this year. But it's really tough to say here. I don't know if the Giants are going to be ready for prime time here, if they're really, really ready to make a statement in the division. I'm going to pick the Cowboys here. It's going to be a tough one here. but I just think they will get back on track and start getting on a roll. I think the Cowboys will get their second win of the season here against the Giants here. I'm going to go with the Cowboys over the Giants. All right, everybody, that wraps up my 4 key game picks for week number 3. I'll talk to you guys next week when I make my picks for week number 4. All my week 3 picks, please check the description below, and I'll see you guys when I talk to you guys next week. Take care.